Chapter 19 Gothel's New Home. I thought they would be here before now, said Ruby, squinting as she looked down the road, hoping to spy Gothel and Flounce's caravan making its way. Why would we would have seen them if they were on the road, Ruby, said Lucinda. Hope they're okay. We haven't heard anything since Jacob packed them off, Martha said, fretting and fidgeting with the lace of her dress. The Odd Sisters looked around their friend's new home. It was a country house, really, larger than a cottage, as Jacob had described it in his letter, but decidedly smaller than what Gothel was used to in the dead woods. The Odd Sisters thought Gothel could be happy there, though. There was a stone fence with a wooden gate at the road, and beyond were beautiful flowery cherry, almond, and magnolia trees, along with fragrant honeysuckle, jasmine, and lavender bushes. It was rather idyllic, the sort of house you read about in a romance story with mossy stones, overgrown ivy, and trellis covered in roses. The sort of house a young woman and her sisters moved to after their situations are reduced, but the reader is left confused, because it's a charming, beautiful house that anyone would be happy to have. So it's a wonder why the protagonists are moaning about the size of the sitting room or lamenting over the parlor being too small to fit a piano. The house was a 2-story affair. Downstairs were the double parlor, kitchen, dining room, and a sitting room Gothel could use as her library. Upstairs were the bedrooms, one for each sister and a small one for a maid, should Gothel decide to take one on. And if Gothel chose, the large attic with the exposed beams could be used to practice magic. The sisters thought Jacob had done well to find Gothel such a lovely home, surrounded by life and beauty. The Odd Sisters had magically perched their own house nearby, just inside the boundaries of Gothel's new property, in a lovely field of wildflowers, next to a creek with an arched bridge that took travelers to the closest town, where they could buy provisions and other sundries. On the other side of the field were rocky black cliffs overlooking the ocean. It really was a lovely spot. Perhaps they stopped to rest in one of the neighboring towns, said Ruby. I'm sure that's it, said Martha, clearly worried. Well, I think you two should stay here and wait for them while I go to town and get some things I know Gothel will need. Lucinda gave her sisters a smile and then added, I won't be gone long, as she walked to their house, waiting in the wildflower field. It was a charming green gingerbread-style house with a witch's cap roof, stained glass windows, and black shutters. When Lucinda got into the house, she waved to her sisters from the large round kitchen window and yelled, Don't worry, sisters. I'm sure they will be here soon, perhaps even before I get back. And off she went, her house rising into the clouds. It wasn't often Lucinda traveled in her house without her sisters. It was strange to see them so small down below with looks of worry on their faces. Perhaps it was strange for them as well, seeing her leave without them. Not to worry, my dears, she thought. I will be back with you soon. No sooner had she gotten into the clouds than it was time to land the witch's cap house in a lovely little town with rows of shops. There were dress shops, a butcher, an open-air market that sold all sorts of produce and herbs, and a baker who baked breads and made sweets in the shapes of animals. He had 2 large windows in the front of his bakery, one that features his edible menagerie and one where he would show off his talents to the passers-by, likely curious about how he made his confections. Lucinda loved the idea of Gothel's walking the cobblestone paths, awestruck by the shops. She almost felt guilty for doing the shopping for her, taking that pleasure away from her, but she knew Gothel would be exhausted when she arrived at her new home, and Lucinda wanted her to be comfortable in her new surroundings. Lucinda's first stop was the dressmaker and notion shop. It was called Frippery's, which she found amusing. She noticed in the window of the shop there were little cards offering and requesting various services. When Lucinda walked into the store, The brass bell over her head rang, getting the attention of the proprietress, who was busy behind the counter putting away spools of ribbon. "Hello, may I help you with something?" asked the woman, eyeing Lucinda, who was suddenly thankful she had been thoughtful enough to wear something not discreet. She was wearing a simple dress the color of eggplants, trimmed in delicate black lace, and none of her normal ornamentation in her hair. She always found it was best to be as plain as possible when traveling in those small towns, and the last thing she wanted to do was draw unwanted attention to herself or Gothel. "Hello, yes, good afternoon," said Lucinda. "I noticed the advertisements in your window. I'm setting up a household for my dear sister, who will be arriving at her new home just one town over. I'm looking for a cook who is also willing to do the shopping, and perhaps a girl who can care for the house. May I find out a card for your window? May I fill out a card for your window?" The woman behind the counter smiled at Lucinda, putting down her ribbon. She seemed to be considering something. "Well, I do have someone I think would be perfect for the position. She has good references. She's an older woman, mind you, but very hard-working. If it's a small home, she could probably manage everything." Lucinda smiled at the woman. "As long as you don't think it would be too much for her, my sister would happily pay her more for the extra duties. When can you arrange to send her over?" The woman handed Lucinda a number of handwritten references and a card with the woman's name printed on it. "Everything seems to be in order. I assume you've checked her references?" "Oh, yes." Lucinda laughed. "I'm so sorry. I've completely neglected to introduce myself. My name is Lucinda White." "A pleasure to meet you, my lady, and my name is Mrs. Lovelace. This is my establishment. Has been for the past 6 years. A pleasure to meet you as well, Miss Lovelace. I appreciate your help, and I admire your name. I assume I could count on you to contact this Mrs. Tindlebottom and inform her we would be happy to have her fill our post?" asked Lucinda as she passed Miss Lovelace a card with Gothel's address, and then she added, "And please do send along a young girl with good qualifications who can do the cleaning if Mrs. Tittlebottom has any objections whatsoever with the amount of work that would be required." Miss Lovelace laughed. Mrs. Tittlebottom can always be counted upon to make her feelings known. I'll be sure to let her know that that is an option. Don't you worry." "Good. And we will provide a carriage to pick up her and her things when she is ready. I'll be sure to let her know. Is there anything else I could do for you?" "Nothing at the moment, but I thank you," said Lucinda, handing Miss Lovelace a small pouch of coins. "That is for your services, Miss Lovelace. Thank you, and have a lovely day." "Thank you, my lady. Come again." The brass bell rang as Lucinda exited. She often laughed to herself when she saw the looks on people's faces when she told them her last name, Miss Lovelace's only admission to knowing Lucinda was one of the king's relations was when she referred to her as Lady. So her cousin's name had traveled even to that great distance. Never mind all that, she told herself. There's still much to do. She spent most of the afternoon wandering the various shops and placing orders to be delivered to Gothel's new home. By the time Lucinda was done shopping, she had arranged the entire stocking of Gothel's larder, and acquired bedding and various other things Gothel might need. Jacob had fortunately arranged the delivery of furniture when he'd bought the home some years ago, and he'd thoughtfully had it covered in white cloth to keep it from getting dusty until his little witch arrived. Hopefully, Ruby and Martha think to remove the cloths before Gothel arrives, Lucinda thought. Lucinda had only one basket to take with her on her trip back to Gothel's new home, the provisions for that evening's dinner. She wasn't sure how soon the deliveries would arrive, and thought it best to take dinner home herself. As Lucinda flew overhead, she could see Gothel's carriage, and many wagons lined up outside her new home. They must be inside, she thought, as she landed the house in the nearby field filled with beautiful yellow wildflowers. She saw her sisters run to the windows so they could see her land. excited to share the news that Gothel and Florence had finally arrived. Lucinda! Lucinda! They're here! Screeched Ruby and Martha. Lucinda laughed. Yes, I see that. How is our little witch? Oh, she's exhausted, said Martha. She's in torment, said Ruby. All to be expected, said Lucinda. And how's Florence? Oh, she's thriving, said Ruby. She's upstairs with Gothel now, said Martha. Shall we stay and take care of our little witch, then, sisters? She needs us now that she has no one else to care for her, at least until we can see her cook, Mrs. Tittlebottom, settle in. Ruby and Martha exchanged amused glances at the cook's name. Mrs. Tittlebottom? The three sisters laughed. Yes, her name is Mrs. Tittlebottom. Contain yourselves. We won't stay too long, will we, Lucinda? Asked Ruby. We still have the matter of Circe. Don't worry, sisters. We won't stay long. I promise. I just want to see that Gothel is in good hands. Shall we leave Florence here to keep an eye on things? Martha looked around to see if anyone was listening, as if Gothel would pop out from behind a curtain. Do you think Gothel will share the flower with us, Lucinda? Have you seen it anywhere? I've searched everywhere. Shh. I didn't sense it from overheard either. Let's not bother Gothel with that right now. Let's go upstairs. I assume Gothel is resting? She is. She's upstairs with Florence. Oh, Lucinda, she is in terrible shape. The long sleep has exhausted her, said Ruby. She lost her home and her companion Jacob, said Lucinda. Not to mention her sisters, said Martha. We will do what we can to help her. We know all too well what it is like to lose a sister, said Lucinda. But we will get Circe back, won't we, Lucinda? Yes, my dear. One way or another, we will get her back.